if psychology and pop culture had a baby, they'd call it Shrink Tank.
A new paper reveals more intelligent people are quicker to learn and unlearn.
90% chance that there's some weird animal out there. Yeah.
Stern's been doing this forever. And far more extreme. From Nashville and Charlotte, this is the Shrink Tank Podcast. Welcome, everybody. If you're joining us for the first time, a very special welcome for you. And if you're coming back for more, thanks again for joining us. I'm Dave Verhagen here in Nashville. We have a fantastic show for you. Our trending topic today is 8th grade. We'll talk about both the movie and the experience of 8th grade in our second segment. But first, let's meet our Charlotte panel. Dr. Emma Kate Wright is here. Emma Kate, how are you?
Hi, Dave. I'm doing well today.
Do you have any memory of 8th grade that was especially good or bad or embarrassing or something like that?
Yes, actually, 8th grade was probably one of my favorite years. I switched schools, and that was in the middle of 7th grade. So 8th grade, I was kind of just finding my friend group, and I was walking outside of Mr. Wood's physics classroom. And he did this really awkward lab experiment where he had a test tube, and he did a very odd visual of providing protection for the test tube so that it wouldn't
Mr.
break.
Wood taught you about protection?
Yes, he did. No, and seriously, me and my friends were rolling on the ground, we were laughing so hard. And it wasn't just one layer of protection. And he's doing the motion. It's 2 layers of protection, and so it was hilarious.
Mr. Wood always wants 2 layers of protection.
Yes.
Golly.
Welcome to 8th grade. And Dr. Frank Gaskell's here. Frank, how are you?
Doing pretty good.
All right. Last time I asked you right after vacation if you're doing well, and you said great. And then you were pretty much incoherent. Your brain did not work at all. So brain working a little
bit. Scientology.
It's working good. I'm back in the groove, doing good.
So any memories of 8th grade for you?
I have one specific memory because I had 0 friends up until 8th grade. And by 0, I mean 0.
Shocking.
And I was bullied horrifically. So I'm going to this new school, and I don't know anybody. I'm terrified. I go to a class, and this kid taps me on the shoulder and says, "Hi, what's your name?" And I'm like, I'm Frank. What's your name? And he said, "Trey." And I thought, somebody's talking to me, and maybe I have a friend. And it turns out we became friends, and I felt rejuvenated.
And weirdly, that friend Trey became my across-the-street neighbor in Charlotte.
True fact.
Totally coincidentally.
It's crazy.
It is
Crazy,
wild.
crazy.
Yep. Well, Jonathan Hedderly's here. He's our certified Asian who rounds out the panel. Jonathan, first of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, Dave. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing dandy.
Whew.
And do you have any 8th grade story?
8th grade was probably a pretty subdued year for the childhood of Jonathan Hedderly. I can't say every year was like that, but the only memory that really stands out was one time I spent the night at a friend's house, and then I woke up and there were 2 girls in the room with us.
Oh.
And he had snuck them in.
All right.
But they made so much noise, the mom got really mad and assumed it was us, so she made him sleep downstairs. So I'm up in his room with these 2 girls. I don't know them.
Oh my gosh.
That's weird.
And
That's amazing.
And then I go back to sleep, and then I'm woken up by the mom freaking out and yelling because apparently the girls had tried to sneak out the front door, and they'd made so much noise they woke her up. And so that blew up. And she got so mad at me. She gave me this lecture Jonathan, I'm really disappointed in you. I expect my son to look to you for, good decisions. And this is 8th grade. I just left. I just walked home. It was 6 in the morning, and I walked 3 miles from home. By the time I got home, she had called my mom, and I explained to my mom what happened. She was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds about right," because she knew this friend.
All right, I'm going to tell an 8th grade story that is probably in my top 3 or 5 most humiliating moments of my life. I think Frank knows the story, but one of the first sleepovers I ever got invited to was over at Carlton.
In 8th grade?
Yes,
Yeah.
no kidding. Well, I did
Dave.
sleepovers in the neighborhood, but no school friend sleepovers. And this is all these guys that were kind of cool in my class, and they invited me to this sleepover. A guy named Carlton invited me. I remember because he had a tree in his house. Like the tree grew up through the roof of his house, and I thought that was the coolest thing. But what I did is I took all these comic books and put them in cases and put the cases in a big hefty trash bag and lugged them to the sleepover. And then when I got there, took all the comic books out, and Carlton said, "What are those for?" And I said, "I thought we could read some of them." And he's like, "No, that's not really what you do on a sleepover." And I was like, "Oh no. Oh, I've humiliated myself."
Dave.
Oh, poor Davey. Poor Davey.
Sweet Dave.
Wow. And that's when he got into ventriloquism.
Right.
Yeah.
And magic.
I tried to become cooler with ventriloquism.
Oh.
That's true.
Golly.
It is a wound to this day, let's say. Well, each week, Jonathan trolls around the internet and he finds a great story of psychology in the news for our first segment that we call
Being Human.
There is new research out that suggests that pet adoption can augment medication response in treatment-resistant depression. Now, during a single year, depression occurs in almost 7% of Americans, and research has shown that both medication and psychotherapy can be helpful in treating depression. Sometimes, however, depression does not respond to treatment, and treatment-resistant depression has been more recently defined as depression that does not respond to 2 or more adequate trials of different medications or psychological therapies. But animal therapy has been used in patients with psychiatric conditions, and now it's showing to be effective with treatment-resistant major depressive disorder. So patients that are willing to have a pet should be encouraged to do so. Emma Kate, what do you think about implementing pet adoption as a therapeutic instrument?
I think this is a fantastic idea. I know they have used dog training programs within jails as prison reforms for their inmates, and there's been a lot of really positive outcomes from that. And I mean, the whole premise behind it is, we're trying to get individuals that are really depressed to be engaging in activities that are enjoyable, to have the brain fire off and create those feel-good chemicals. And so having this little creature that you're responsible for requires you to take it outside and take it on walks, or I guess it's a little different if it's a cat. But the whole point is it's getting you actively engaged. And one of the things this article talked about that I loved was how it kind of facilitates friendship too, where I have met so many people, and this is anecdotal, in my neighborhood just by walking my dog. And so I've gotten to know a lot of my neighbors because they have dogs, and we see each other and we chat, and it's been a really positive thing. So I like this a lot.
I will add to this. The puppies, they've been bred over the whatever millennia to have more childlike features. They've got bigger, rounder eyes. They've got rounder heads. And what that triggers in the adult brain is baby. And you like, oh, look at the little puppy, and your voice goes up. And when you see babies, with the exception of Dave, you release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone or whatever it is. Yeah, whatever the words are. But
This time you have to say the word hormone.
dogs are the best. But what is it with you and babies, Dave? Maybe you should adopt a baby.
Oh,
Well,
I've already done that. So
Well, you see, his next sleepover,
Just a
he brought a
couple.
bag full of babies to a
my
sleepover, and it didn't go well. So
It did not
babies
go
for him is just like,
I don't know what it is. There's a thing in my brain that's like with a baby, human baby, it's like holding a sack of oranges. It's like, oh, it's a sack of potatoes here. But with a dog, it's like, I love the doggy. I don't know why. Now, my oldest daughter, is the same way with lizards and snakes. Like when she sees a lizard or snake, her brain lights up and she wants to be all like snuggly, lovey, kissy. And when she sees a human baby, she's like, ugh. And she literally has gone out of the room when someone brings a baby in the room. So I don't know what that's about. But I'm surprised Jonathan hasn't chimed in here yet, because Jonathan's usually very kind of like too cool for school emotionally, but he's got this new dog that he might as well start his own Instagram account for the dog.
True
because he is
fact.
all lit up about the dog.
it's so
like,
cute.
the dog is so cute. Look at this video. It's like the most emotionally engaged I've ever seen Jonathan in his life. So is that true, Jonathan?
Yeah, my life is so boring and uneventful that we had to get a puppy in order to ignite some deep, suppressed emotions. But no, we have a corgi named Theodore, and the thing is I've actually no one in our family. I don't even think Julie, but maybe she's the exception. We've never had a puppy. We've had dogs, but we've always got them or adopted them from a shelter or when they're already potty trained. And so this is the first time we've ever had a puppy, and we're having to go through that puppy process. And I do think there's something that unique and different about that evokes a lot of emotion and attachment and just playfulness as that dog starts to really bond to you versus a lot of my other pets have sort of been a little cautious, and they kind of have to trust you and kind of feel you out before they feel comfortable with you.
We've got a rescue dog that's a dachshund that's a little neurotic weirdo, but she's sweet and awesome. But now we just have this brand new border collie lab mix who's blind. And it is hilarious because not only is she blind, but she has the wanderlust. So if she gets out, she will take off running, like just take off and then run right into a door. Like just, it's like comedy gold.
Dang.
But that dog is honestly the sweetest animal I think I've ever met. And it's like one of the highlights of my day. When you come home, she does this little roo, roo, roo growl and bark. And then like there's something about an affectionate dog that will light you up emotionally in a way that it's very hard for other things to do. So I'm totally on board with this pets and therapy thing. All right. Well, let's, if you have questions or comments, you can write us at Facebook at shrinktank.com, and we'd love to get your comments. Let's shift to our second segment, which is the movie 8th Grade. We're going to talk about 8th Grade, the movie in particular, and then also the experience of 8th grade. And Emma Kate, did you get a chance to see the movie yet?
I did. Frank and I actually got to see it together.
All right.
Yep.
So I'm going to ask, I know Jonathan did because he's posted on it. So I want to ask each of you your impressions of the movie, just kind of a quick review of the movie. Then we'll get into some of the content in a bit. But what's your review of the movie?
So I thought it was so spot on in terms of accuracy and the level of cringe that I felt the whole time because of the social awkwardness of the main character was phenomenal. I loved it.
Frank, how about you?
I thought I was going to have a panic attack through the entire movie and felt sick in my stomach. It was amazingly perfect. I don't necessarily want to talk about the ending of the movie because I know I'm going to hear about it. But I will tell you that for me, that was 7th grade. That was not my 8th grade.
You stopped wearing women's bathing suits after 7th grade.
And I'll comment that in the middle of the movie, I heard Frank say, "Can we leave now?" Like, he was just that uncomfortable.
I really wanted to leave.
Jonathan, what's your quick review?
I loved it. I have 2 teen daughters, and the events aren't necessarily parallel, but the emotion and the feeling, like the mood, what it evokes, it felt very familiar. To the point it's unsettling, or almost like I'm watching home movies, just the emotion that seemed to accompany this film. I thought it was phenomenal. It really surprised me how good it was, because there's nothing about Bo Burnham that would have told me that this movie would be as great as it is.
And the music, too. I
Yeah,
mean,
love the
that music. Oh, yeah.
Well, I will say from the very beginning, it's one of the few movies I've ever seen that within the first minute to 2 minutes, you're totally hooked and you're totally in love with this character, and you'll go anywhere on this journey. I mean, I just think when she's filming her little YouTube or whatever it is video, and she's kind of trying to be cool and insightful and thoughtful, and she's sort of stammering around. It was just like, oh, Pumpkin, we just love you. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it had one of my favorite scenes in a movie in years, and it's a surprising scene. I don't know if you guys have a different scene that stands out, but the scene that stands out for me, and I won't give away too much, but it's toward the end. It's when she was having a chicken nugget meal with Gabe.
Yes.
This is what I really don't want to talk about.
I was waiting for this because I was going to bring it up and you know it.
Him and Kate, I'm just watching this whole thing. And as soon as I saw the chicken nuggets and all the sauces lined up. First of all, Emma Kate's just pointing at me the entire time. But now this was a cool moment because when he said Szechuan sauce, I think Emma Kate and I were saying it at the same time. And then I was like, this is way too close to home. This is way too close. Please, I need the credits. Can we please get out of here?
Yeah, and it was lightsaber utensils.
Oh, God, yeah. All
Frank.
of it was just a nightmare.
Frank.
But I loved the movie. I loved it. I think it should be mandatory viewing for every dad and eighth grader on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, that dad was perfect.
Yeah, the performance by the dad and by the main character are award nominee worthy. I mean,
Yes.
they should pick up some definite nominations for both those performances.
And it should not be rated R. There's no reason for that whatsoever.
Yeah, and I get why. I mean, it's particularly let's just say a scene revolving around a banana, or a whole sequence revolving around that. But it's, again, true to the experience of most eighth graders. By the way, I just spoke at Montgomery Bell Academy this morning,
Ooh.
and that's the school that Dead Poet Society was based on. And in the course of my talk, this is like the kickoff the year talk. In the course of my talk, I said the words suck, turd, and penis. So thank you very much.
Good job.
And by the
in
way,
that order?
They applauded. Yes, I got applause for those
Oh my
words.
God.
Less laughter and more applause, which was a little disconcerting, but I did. Yeah. So we all love the movie. We think it's just almost like mandatory viewing for kids of this age, parents of this age group. What do you think they got right? What did they get right about kids who are in this sort of early formative part of adolescence, right around eighth grade or so? What did they nail?
From my perspective, I guess you can really just see this identity formation bubbling for her, where the main character, Kayla, she really has no idea who she is, and she's trying to figure that out. And so, you mentioned these little YouTube videos and trying to put on this persona of, oh, she's super positive, she's got it all together. But the reality is she is just kind of desperately trying to make friends and doesn't really know what she wants to do. And the beginning scene, I think she, takes a shower, puts her makeup on, and then takes a selfie and is like, oh, I woke up this way. And so it's just, it really does get at that sort of crisis that kids kind of experience around this age in terms of trying to figure out who am I?
I think they also got the social media and the technology interference in development and how that really increases depression in people, especially kids. And I think it speaks to the increase in depression in society in general. But the stuff that I thought really, I mean, I remember in my own life watching her in the mall and being so nervous about going to the mall, and the look on her face as she was watching these seniors interact and how happy she was. I had that growing up. I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm out of the mess," and that was great. And also, I'll tell you, when she went to the pool party and she was having a panic attack in the bathroom, that little girl was named Frank Gaskell.
That is not the first time those words have been spoken.
I was hiding in a bathroom.
Frank Gaskell was a little girl.
Before a boy-girl party in the 7th grade, having a panic attack and wanting to call my parents and say, please take me home, please take me home.
Oh.
Well, you were wearing a Speedo, so that probably contributed to it.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a pool party, which was weird.
Oh, God.
Jonathan, how about you in terms of what they got right?
I think they got so many things right. I think both Emma Kate and Frank point to a number of things. I think just overall the awkwardness of that phase of life, and even with those interactions at high school, when they go visit the high school, and you just sort of see, for some people, even just a year further down the road, how much growth and change happens. And it can be so daunting for some people. I think it got it right even with observing the popular kids, and that for some people, middle school may be really awkward and hard, but on the outside, it looks like they have it all together and that their life is great. And I think that's one of the challenges that social media has sort of amplified in this generation. But I don't know a single person that hasn't gone through some level of insecurity or awkwardness. And I think it's just accelerated during that time of life.
Yeah, and then I really loved the dynamics between the daughter and the dad, especially because middle school is one of those time frames where, again, related to that identity piece, where, you know, the kids really need you and they want you, and then they're like, whoa, back off. I don't need you around. You're embarrassing me. And so you can see that, you know, with some of the issues that come up throughout that film, where she does kind of go back to dad, but then she's also like, okay, dad, you don't need to check on me anymore. I'm doing great in my life. So nice job with that.
I also really appreciated her development through the film because the last video she makes, I felt as if I was seeing a high school kid ready to move forward, and she'd found her footing. She'd sort of found her identity. I was so impressed with her performance.
Oh, it was a great performance. It was truly great. And one of the things that the movie did really well from a storytelling standpoint, from a filmmaking standpoint, that Bo Burnham, I think, nailed also, and you've alluded to this already, is it really got away from some of the expected tropes and some of the cliches. Like the dad was kind of nerdy, but he was ultimately the hero. And some of the boys were jerks, but ultimately there were one boy and the dad ended up being kind of the heroes along with her of the story. And the girl in high school who befriended her, you're expecting her to kind of turn or to not be as she seemed, and she ended up being just as she seemed.
I totally didn't see that coming, too.
And so there's a lot of things from a storytelling standpoint that really worked as well. So my question here with this as a film, but also as a depiction of life for an eighth grader now, is what do you think this film captures that is particularly unique for this generation? Some of the stuff that we're talking about is true from eighth grade when we were in eighth grade, when our parents were in eighth grade, but some of it's really unique to this generation. What do you think that was that it kind of captured?
I think it's all the life distractions. There's so much. And I also think it captured the, I want to call it adultification of kids that I see. That seems very present today.
I think I'm probably the closest to having been in eighth grade. And I remember I actually got my phone in eighth grade. And I was really early compared to a lot of my friends to having a cell phone. And now you can see just this crazy divide in terms of technology. Most of kids' worlds are centered on tech and social media, and that's how they connect.
I remember when I got my first phone in eighth grade, and it had the long cord and the roto dialer, and
then like a
it was
giant
in the kitchen.
bag for your battery.
Yeah, I remember when our family first got television
I know.
or a
It
phone.
was crazy.
Or
It had Snake on it. That was a great
VHS.
game.
I remember when we got a microwave, and
I was there
told
when we
Color
discovered
television.
I was told to stay outside of the kitchen when it was in use.
I remember when we were still at war with my people.
I just about spit out my coffee on that one.
Jonathan, what do you see as being unique to this generation?
Well, with this film, and one of the things that we're seeing that this generation is struggling with is anxiety. And I think that this film did an incredible job of personalizing it with one character, Kayla, and how she's really anxious about everything and how there's this struggle to discover what authenticity in your true self is. I mean, the film opens up, like you said, with her doing these inspirational videos, which we know she does not have that confidence in herself. The second scene is her waking up, putting all this makeup on, and then getting back to bed, taking a Snapchat picture and saying, like, just woke up looking like this, And part of the anxiety we see with her character and in this generation is they're they're hypercritical of themselves. Like one of the most devastating scenes that happens towards the end is a very unsettling scene where she is really a victim, but you find her apologizing for the actions that take place. And that just kind of shows you how like this generation struggles with like these high expectations that they can't meet, and then always feeling like they're the problem, they're to blame. And that scene was so devastating to me.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite scenes, and it just really inspired me when she walked to the end of the line and confronted the two girls that were bullies. But what was so great is she just had to look down at the floor while she was doing it. It was just too overwhelming. But I love that scene.
And that was you, right?
As
a child?
Yeah, not so much. No, not really.
Never confronted.
No, because I'd get beat up if I did that.
Frank, were you ever the boy that with the dreamy eyes where the music starts playing
Yes.
and he walks into the room?
It made me laugh so hard.
Nope, not so much.
Did you look at boys and that music came on in your head?
Yes, it did.
All right, last question. All of you guys either have kids around this age or work with kids around this age. And so my question for you is, what do you think is your best advice for either a parent of an 8th grader or for an 8th grader, him or herself? Frank?
It's going to be do what the dad in the movie does. When you see a teenager having a meltdown or not wanting to talk, give him or her space, which is a lesson I really take to heart. And the best example of that was after she had gotten back from this inappropriate approach by a boy in the back of a car, that she was just melting down. And the dad knew to give her space and approached her slowly. And she ultimately accepted his hug.
Mine would be to parents, and I would tell them to not take your kids' emotions personally, because the limbic system of the brain is on board in middle school, and then the prefrontal thinking part of the brain doesn't come on for a long time, and your kids are registering emotions in different ways. And again, the movie did a nice job of that, where you just see her kind of yelling at dad, and it's not meant to be nasty. It is what it is. So don't take that personally.
Yeah, parents, don't try to fix or rescue, don't helicopter, but you got to keep trying. And I think that the dad gets an A+ for effort. Like even when she kind of pushes him away, he keeps trying. And it's not to impart these life lessons or lectures. It's because he wants to connect with her, and he knows that they're both going to be better off and stronger by staying connected in these tumultuous years.
Well, if you have questions or comments about the movie 8th Grade or our discussion, we'd love for you to write us at feedback@shrinktank.com. We'd love to hear from you. Well, our final segment is something that we call our doctor's orders. These are things that we're personally enjoying in pop culture. Emma Kate, what do you have?
So this is actually somewhat related to our discussion based on the movie 8th Grade. And we have a local woman named Michelle Icard who has a fantastic group for females called Athena's Path. And it's a curriculum that helps girls navigate kind of the tricky social scene for middle school. And she has a great book called Middle School Makeover with lots of tips to kind of help improve those middle school years for parents. So I would recommend you check this out.
Frank?
I want to recommend Stephen King's book, The Outsider. It is a true detective novel up until a certain point, and it is some of his best work, which is in contrast to my last recommendation, Sleeping Beauties, which was fine, but what I found is Stephen King does his best work when he writes by himself and does not collaborate.
Jonathan?
There is a Fathom event all year round celebrating the films of Studio Ghibli and the great Japanese animation studio. My family and I recently went and saw this film called Grave of the Fireflies, which quite honestly may be the saddest movie we have ever seen. It's an animated film about two Japanese siblings surviving the last days of World War II. And basically, at one point, like Frank with 8th grade, one of my daughters was saying, "Can we leave?" partway through the film, and at the end, they looked at me and goes like, "Why did we watch that?" It's so harrowing and sad. But for the rest of the year, there's going to be a lot of Studio Ghibli films showing on theaters. I highly recommend you check them out. It's great to see that type of animation on a big screen.
Nope, won't do it.
Yeah. My family said, why did we watch this? So I recommend it to you. My recommendation is actually the other direction. It's a very funny movie. It's a Hulu original documentary called Too Funny to Fail. It's about the life and death of the Dana Carvey show. Dana Carvey's show was on just for a few episodes, and it had some of the who's who of comedy in the day, even before they were the people that they are now in terms of career and reputation. Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Louis C.K., Robert Smigel, all wrote and performed for the show. And it really just went completely bust. And the documentary explains why that happened. Definitely worth watching. Too Funny to Fail. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Shrink Tank podcast. We hope you'll check out shrinktank.com for great articles and videos. And also, you can find links to our Doctor's Orders products there. You can follow us on Twitter at shrink_tank and like us on Facebook, please. For questions or comments, drop us a note. Our email is feedback@shrinktank.com. If you like the show, we hope you'll give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. It helps us build our audience, and we would greatly appreciate it. Our producer and theme music composer is Sean Beck. Our associate producer and social media guru is Mariel Butler. For Emma Kate Wright, Jonathan Hedderly, and Frank Gaskell in Charlotte, I'm Dave Verhagen in Nashville. Tell all your friends about us and make it a great week.
Shrink Tank.